Hey guys, it's Tyler from TCGRewind.com. I'm here to do a video ranking every single deck in the September 2011 meta as a tier list. I know that in one of my initial videos, there was a lot of skepticism towards me saying that there are like close to like 30 decks that are at least tier 1. And I kind of wanted to give a breakdown of what my tier list is for this format so you can kind of see what that actually looks like. But overall, you might be surprised at what's like strong and what's not. And the only thing you can really do to kind of verify what I'm saying is download the decks and play them yourself. They're all on tcgrewind.com. You just click on whatever picture you want to play and you can download it right there and give it a shot. So without any further ado, we'll just hop right in.
Time warp, go!
We'll start with our boys Naturia here. Naturia, I would not rank very high. I would say we would put it in the tier 2 slot. So just for a breakdown of like what all my tiers are, S tier is like super broken. So like if Dino Rabbit was in this format, I would probably put it S tier. Like that's like cut above the rest. I don't think most decks can beat it, right? Or like they're gonna really struggle to. But that is not the case for most of these on this list. In fact, I don't think there are any S tier decks in 2011. I think they're all just very, very good or feel very good for the most part, and nothing really exceeds tier 1. But yeah, so tier 1 would be like strong, like very strong, could win a tournament, right? Tier 1.5 is something that is like probably close to tier 1, so like it's like pretty strong, but maybe not quite there in terms of strength. And then tier 2, I would say, is like not the best, and I don't even know what this D tier here is. Maybe this is just for like something that's like real bad, like you know, we'll take like Skull Servants, wherever those guys are at. There we go. Skull Servants aren't that good. Maybe throw them in D tier. I didn't even add this here, but you know, who cares? Okay. So Morphtronics, another tier 2 deck, and I'll probably organize these as we go in order of strength, but right now we're just gonna kind of slap them on. We have Relinquished. I'd say again another tier 2 deck. It's just kind of like a worse version of Piper Chaos, which Piper Chaos is a very good deck, and this deck is like okay. So we're getting some of the jank out of the way right away. Ancient Gear, again, tier 2. I think like this deck is just kind of like a worse version of Malefics, so it's like you know, it's all right. First tier 1 deck we're seeing is Chaos. If you haven't watched the first episode of Tournaments, go watch it. You see Joe Girolando piloting Chaos, and that deck is really, really strong, and you can kind of see some of its strength in that series. Next deck, I have Tengu Plants. It's represented by Black Rose because, you know, it's like the plant dragon. It's cool. Tengu Plants is easily tier 1. I'd say it's tough to say if it's better than Chaos, honestly. I know this deck is like renowned as like the best deck, but I don't necessarily think that's true. I think like overall it probably is slightly better than Chaos, just in terms of like it's such a flexible and like generic deck, right? Like there's a lot you can do. Salvo Chaos is just strictly a worse version of actual Chaos, but I'm not gonna lie, it has some decent plays. Like it still feels pretty strong. It runs a lot more anti-meta cards, which can actually help quite a bit. I think this would probably be the first one filling the tier 1.5 slots, just because like I think Chaos in general is just really, really good. It's a super versatile like type of deck, and then also Salvo Chaos just has a lot of anti-meta cards that can kind of help. Blackwing, this would be another tier 1.5. I probably would put it above. Like I think Salvo Chaos is going to be like my lowest one in tier 1.5. Like it's okay, but like why would you play it over Chaos, right? Blackwing it's 1.5. Like I've seen it do well, in all honesty. And I think with the right build, especially with some of the more like modern Edison takes that people have been doing lately, where they kind of like revolve the deck more around value, I actually think this deck could even possibly be bumped up to tier 1 with more experimentation. But where it's at right now, I'd say it's just so nerfed. Like Kalut's at 1, Gale's at 1, and then Whirlwind's at 1. So it feels a lot weaker than the other decks, but for the most part, it still like has triple Icarus. It still has value. It still has ways to make plays. Then we have Value Turbo. This is basically the 2011 iteration of the Edison deck. I would put this at a very high 1.5, maybe even tier 1. Like it's actually still very, very good in 2011, just based on my testing. And then we have this deck is going to seem really troll, but we have Cloudian Synchro, okay? And that deck is one of its own sort of thing. It is really weird, because it's honestly kind of pretty much Tengu plants, except it runs a Cloudian engine. So it runs the what's his name? Let me check for you guys. Cloudian Turbulence, that's it, and Smoke Ball. So like the basic idea is, instead of running Tengus, like you still run Tour Guides and Thunder Kings and the plant engine, you just run Cloudian Turbulence over Tengu. And this has different results, but it actually isn't that bad, I guess you could say. Like, so like it's like one of those things where I think objectively it's worse than Tengu plants, but the ceiling is almost higher than Tengu plants because of what Turbulence does. So if you don't know what Turbulence does, it can special summon a Cloudian Smoke Ball from like the deck or graveyard, and it can't be destroyed by battle. So like this plus Glow Up Bulb, like a normal summon of Glow Up Bulb or like a 1-for-1 or something like that, has a higher ceiling for like a really strong combo, because it gives you your level 5 and your level 1 for the draw 2 off of Librarian Formula. I think this deck is actually pretty decent. Again, it's not at the level of Tengu plants. I wouldn't put it tier 1, but I would definitely put it tier 1.5. I think it's actually pretty playable. Crystal Beast. This is another interesting one. I think low-key Crystal Beasts have potential to be like pretty strong. I've been kind of experimenting with ways to make this deck better. The list I currently have on the website, I don't think is the strongest it could be. For example, I think there is a world where this deck could use Divine Wind of the Mist Valley or something like that, strictly because Sapphire Pegasus is a wind, Cobalt Eagle is a wind, and if they're in like your spell or trap card zones, I believe if you like attack with like a Mist Valley Falcon and bounce it from the spell or trap card zone, you can then special from deck. So I think there's a world where there's like a cool iteration of like Crystal Beast, maybe in combination with Mist Valleys, that it could work. I just haven't taken the time to like hash that out yet. So for now, I think I'll put it in tier 2. And I think it's, yeah, it probably goes around there. Lightsworn, this is a deck that honestly, it's like relatively full power in 2011. Like it has triple Judgment Dragon, so, and it still has priority. So it's like not that bad. The one I have on the website is like a plant synchro version, so you run a lot of the plant engine plus Lightsworn, making it really explosive. The only downside to it is it can be a little bricky, and I think like, you know, I mean, and that's Lightsworn in general, but I think like because of how potentially bricky it is, I'd say it would go in the tier 1.5 slot. But high end on it. Like I think this deck is probably one of the better tier 1.5 decks. Okay, so we have Monarchs, and traditionally Monarchs were tier 1 in this format. And I think they're really strong, because in some cases there just aren't enough Veilers or Warnings in the world. But at the same time, because those cards exist, it inherently makes Monarchs just slightly less good. So we'll be extremely fair and we'll put them high tier 1.5. And then, okay, so we have this one represents Flameveil Sworn. I have Fire Dog for Flameveil down here. But Flameveil Sworn is honestly, again, just another tier 1.5 deck. I think it's okay, not great. But it still can easily like deal with a lot of the tier 1 decks. Aliens, I was surprised at how decent aliens can be, actually. Like, the list I have on there, I've done some crazy combos with it in testing that I was, like, honestly shocked about how, like, weirdly strong it could be. Just because of their, like, continuous monster reborn and, like, the, like, Golgar itself is a really strong synchro. I would put it probably lower on the tier 2 side, but, like, honestly, like, it's not that bad. Okay, this one represents zombie control. This, again, I would probably put tier 2. It's, like, okay, but I think all around, like, the zombie Monarch deck is just strictly better. But this deck is, like, has its windows to be good. Like, the combo for it is, like, Zombie World plus, Rivalry. So, Zombie World plus Rivalry of Warlords. That's what makes it good, because like you can prevent your opponent from summoning, basically. If they have like any existing monster on the field, they can't like they cannot normal summon anything in addition to it because of that. And then also like low key like Red Eyes Zombie Dragon is like YuGiOh Guardian on steroids, as long as you have Zombie World on the field. So like pretty good. That, and Zombie World also prevents your opponent from tributing for Caius and stuff like that. Which is like pretty common in like Tengu plants. So yeah, it's actually pretty scary. But again, I don't think like it'd be higher than tier 2. Okay, so this is Counter Fairies. I would easily put Counter Fairies like tier 1.5. I probably would put it above Cloudian Synchro in these. This deck has like high potential for blowout. Its issue is dealing with problem cards. But in my list, I abused this very card right here. And I forget its name because it's like, it's a weird name to pronounce, to be honest. Let's see. Meltiel, Sage of the Sky. So like Meltiel, Sage of the Sky, I might be butchering that pronunciation, but this card is actually like, it's weird because with Sanctuary in the Sky, which like you want to run Sanctuary in the Sky because Sanctuary in the Sky basically has its own version of like Infernity Barrier just for having Sanctuary in the Sky on the field. This card gets to like pop a card and gain you life points. So like this is like the old version of Guiding Ariande, right? Like this is the card that like keeps your life points high while using a bunch of counter traps. And it honestly like it almost has like a pseudo Inzectors feel in a way. Like, I mean, it's not nearly at that level, but like if you can run cards like Negate Attack, for example, with this guy on the field, and then Negate Attack becomes like a Sakuretsu that gains you 1,000 life points. So there's like a lot of ways to deal with problem cards through a build that's abusing this guy. Which means that I think it's actually like pretty strong. But again, I don't think it's like stronger or like consistent enough to deal with like a lot of the tier 1 decks. I think it like can certainly beat them, but not at that level. Okay, this is a deck I actually created myself. It's Volcanic Heroes. And I love this deck. I think it's really fun. I think it's pretty good, to be honest, but is it tier 1? Probably not. I think I would probably put it around... I don't know if it's better than Black Wings. It might be better than Counter Fairies. No, we'll put it there. But basically the concept is you can like actively pop your monsters. All your monsters search you like either Blaze Accelerator or a hero between like Stratos and Rocket. So it's like big gadgets almost. And then you can like just make Nova Master with Miracle Fusion, and that feels pretty good because Nova Master is like a crazy crack card. But you just kind of outgrind your opponent, out-resource them. It has a lot of potential, and I think the build I have on there is probably the best build it's going to be. But again, I do think it like has its moments where it struggles versus the meta. All right, this is Plasma Heroes. This is just a deck that revolves around Destiny Hero Plasma. Honestly, it's pretty good. But I haven't like tested it far enough to say that it's like tier 1. I think I'd put it like, we'll put it lower here. It has a lot of like cool plays it can do. It can do a lot of things, and Plasma is like a continuous skill drain that sucks monsters. Like that's nothing to scoff at, you know. Like it's a good it's a well versed like good card. Okay, Dark World. I think no one would really dispute that Dark World is tier 1. I think it's like probably one of the lowest tier 1 decks. This is strictly because I think it's really bricky. It's almost kind of like on par with Lightsworn, but it's just like so much stronger than Lightsworn because of like how explosive it can be. Like a turn 1 card destruction can honestly just win you a game. Okay, heroes. This deck is super versatile, and this would be probably referring to like hero stun. So like Joe's build from 2012. It basically is completely playable in 2011. I think that build is really strong. And heroes have proven to be good in Edison as well. I don't think anyone would dispute this deck being tier 1. It's really good. And I think I would probably rate it higher than Dark World. Yeah, it's a tough call, but I just think this is more consistent than Dark World. Lancer Frogs. This deck was not played in 2011 at all, really. Like, it didn't see play, but it's arguably better in 2011 than it was in 2012. That's because, like, 2012 meta was, like, way more oppressive and scary. 2011 meta isn't that scary. So I would put Lancer Frogs tier 1. This deck can do a lot of crazy things, and it, like, if it gets going, like, if it gets Lancer and, like, resolves Lancer's effects, like, it's a blowout. Like, the deck can just destroy so many things. Like, Lancer plays around, like, Horn of the Phantom Beast really, really nicely. It plays around, like, I mean, most of anything anyone does, right? Like, it just, like, the ability to prevent destruction and then search cards or draw cards by doing that is just, it's just cracked. Like, that's so good. Exodia, it's easily tier 2. You could almost say B tier. The build I have on there isn't that bad. I actually like stole it from Dustin Bourne, if you've ever heard of him. He was playing a build similar to it at locals back in the day, I remember, and I like using like scrub raid and skill drains, and I thought it was like a pretty decent way to play Exodia. The only issue with it is, just like any Exodia deck, its win condition is fragile. If you discard it through like Royal Tribute or like Dark World, like, you can consider the match lost, or if you get hit with a Trish, you lose. And you know, so like it has its risks, but it is like functional and actually can beat a lot of decks. It's not that bad. But yeah, I would put it tier 2 for sure. Any variant of TG, this would be like pure TG. It's tier 1. It's easily tier 1. I almost would say TG is greater than plants. It's super versatile, and honestly one of the most like difficult decks to ever outgrind, just because you're constantly searching more resources. And Horn of the Phantom Beast is just a really broken card. And this is TG stun. I think pure TGs, it's a close call. I like, these are pretty one and the same. Like, they're both really, really good, but again, I think they're both probably better than Tengu plants, but it's like really, really close between like all of the top 3 decks. Here's another one that might surprise you, Diva Hero. This deck is mostly popular in Edison. It's like a tier 1 deck in Edison, but this deck, honestly, there's really not a lot changed from Edison to 2011 for this deck, and honestly, it has like more power cards. Like, Tour Guide is really good in Diva Hero, and like, in my testing, this deck has felt really cracked. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like, I definitely think it's tier 1. I think we'll put it over Dark World. We'll put Dark World over it, though. It might be the lowest tier 1 deck, but it's like, it has a lot of plays, man. Like, I can't really describe it. It's pretty good. Like, it just feels really good to play. This deck represents Water Synchro, which is basically like another type of like Tengu plants that revolved around frogs. That deck also feels really good. It's really similar to plants. So I would put it probably up. We'll put it like around here. I mean, I think Tengu plants is just better, but it's still tier 1 for sure. All right, we have Rock Stun. Rock Stun is a cool deck, man. Like I really like these Rocky boys. I think they're all beaters. They all negate stuff. They're super fun, super cool. But again, I don't think they're like this deck can consistently beat the actual meta, and there's just better stun decks out there, given like TG or like B Stun or something like that. So, yeah, we'll move Rock Stun probably way down here. I'd probably put it right around there. All right, and then we have Gas FTK. This deck's tier 1, man. It's an FTK that can't be hand trapped. At the cost of running an all monster deck. It's all monster deck does suck. And like this would be like honestly Mongo broken if it wasn't for the fact that so many decks run skill drain, right? Or can side into skill drain. Like effect negation in general just like in back row just kind of destroys this deck. Like, because obviously you can't run MST, you can't run anything. So like it has I don't want to say small, but a pretty unlikely chance to open the FTK, and that's like what it has going for it. That and the FTK can't be hand trapped. That's all really good, but at the same time, do I think that it's like super broken or no counterplay? Definitely not. It's balanced in this meta because of the other things around it, but I still think it's tier 1. Ice Barriers. This is a Swift tier 2. The build I put on there is actually based on like I think like Ice Barriers in general, they get a bad rap. Like that, they're like notoriously the bad deck, right? But the build I made on there isn't doing the standard thing I've seen other people try with the deck, which like people get baited by the fact that Ice Barrier has really strong Ice Barrier synchros. So they think this needs to be a synchro deck, right? But that's not the case at all. I actually don't run tuners in the Ice Barrier deck that I made. It's strictly like almost like a Monarch deck. Like you tribute 2 for this guy, and then the General YuGiOh or whatever his name is. That guy, his effect is like if your opponent wants to resolve a monster effect, they have to discard a card to do it. That card in combination with this, who just monster reborn something during the end phase, can like actually hard blow out your opponent. It actually like can control the game. Not to mention you get to run cards like triple econ with the frogs and like soul exchange to like tribute your opponent's monsters. There's room for plays. Like this deck really isn't that bad. Plus Light and Darkness Dragon feels so good in this deck. Like when they finally grind out the Light and Darkness Dragon negates, you can just bring back this guy and then he'll bring back the other stuff. So like it's just like really annoying. It's honestly not that bad. It feels pretty good. Gadgets, I think gadgets are always in some way tier 1. I think the right build with the right player, that like this build is referring to like pure gadgets, so like the Tengu gadgets, not running Machina. This deck's pretty strong just because you can use Ultimate Offering. Ultimate Offering lets you just summon, like flood your board with Exceeds. Like you can go into triple like Utopia, you could go into Roach, or you can go into Wind Up Zenmeister, which is a machine, so like synergizes with limiter removal. And I think that's like pretty strong, especially because Roach is really good. Roach with Utopia is really good because you can protect the Roach from getting swung over, and then prevent your opponent from synchroing. So there's a lot of control with this build, and it's really annoying to go against. I think it's definitely tier 1 in terms of its strength. Like it can go toe to toe with any of these decks really. Herald of Perfection, my god, is this deck broken. I honestly think I have to put it up here on the high end of tier 1s. If you haven't seen this deck or haven't tested it, this is basically Agents running Herald of Perfection in it, but which like Agents on themselves are a strong engine. You have multiple decks that like make Agents good, like, you know, even the Gas FTK is just running Agents with no back row. But this card itself just makes for such a strong like I don't know. It basically, the combo is you can tour guide into like Leviathan Dragon, or like tour guide bringing out the Dijin that prevents special summoning. I think it's Releaser of Ritual. You special summon him with tour guide, and then you can exceed with him to make like Leviathan Dragon or something like that, right? Then you can activate Herald, like Dawn of the Herald, and ritual using it from grave with like a Venus in your hand, and then you add the Venus back, and then you have a 2800 defense monster that can negate anything and says your opponent can't special summon. And in the like within the like confounds of 2011, there are very, very few decks that can out that. Like honestly, like you have to grind out all of their negates, and not being able to special summon, especially when they have like a 2500 Leviathan Dragon on field, like it's hard. It is so scary. It's a win con in itself. And yeah, I don't know. Like it was a pretty underexplored deck for the time. I do think the hard part about it is because you have to run like the ritual engine. You have a lot of openings to brick, and the tour guide into like the Jin combo isn't super reliable. It's like pretty easy to Veiler. But like basically at any point, if you can get that off, like get like the what's his name, Herald of Perfection plus like with a Jin on it, it's almost always game. It's really good. Ojama, it's a tier 2. It's a cool deck. I think that it has room to like do stuff, but I don't think it's like it's anything too crazy. Like there are weirdly cool combos and synergies with that Ojama build. Like go try it out. Like it can do stuff for sure. But it's nothing crazy. Infernity are like, you could make a case that this is tier 1. It topped a YCS in this format. Like it can be really strong. I personally think that because it's so weak to hand traps, that this deck cannot be higher than tier 1.5. Like it gets completely destroyed by Veiler Maxi. So I think that like it's hard to rank higher than 1.5. Karkari, this deck topped multiple YCSs at the time. Arguably one of the best decks of the format. I think it's really, really strong. And like just so explosive, can just blow people out. I think this deck was underrepresented for the time as well, because honestly the whole deck is common and not a lot of people like playing with common cards, right? Like outside of the extra deck, but like because of that, this was like weirdly a budget deck at the time, so a few people would play it, but a lot of people would opt to play other things. But like the people who did like it would top with it a lot of the time, so like it's good. It's definitely good. You cannot dispute that. Chainburn, same thing as Exodia. It's like a gimmick deck, right? Like can easily get blown out, has its moments of being strong. I don't think this is the meta for Chainburn to be strong. I think Chainburn gets a lot stronger throughout the years, but it's not strong here. Malefic, this is like another skill drain, like beatdown deck. This is also tier 1.5. It's pretty good. Like it can blow people out just through like you drop a Malefic Cyber End, flip skill drain, and if your opponent doesn't have an out to that, like you have a potential to just kind of win. But it's also like pretty bricky, and there's also like it's also fragile. So yeah, it's tier 1.5 at best. It's good, not great. Agents, I honestly think agents, just if you look at like all the different tier 1 variants of agents that can pop up, as well as just how good the deck itself really is, this applies to agents as well as TG agents for some reason. Oh, I see. Okay, so I put counter fairies in there twice. I was trying to figure out what I did. Okay, so yeah, this counter fairy here, this would be the representation of counter fairies, but this is actually supposed to be agents and TG agents. So yeah, I mean this represents both. Honestly, the Hyperion represents both, whether you're playing like the Chaos version or TG agents. I think it's just probably like just barely the best deck of the format. I think it's so versatile. It's so strong. It has like, it just can do so much. You could almost put these, like, I mean, you almost could put any of these in a tier of their own, but they're all strong for different reasons, but they're all weak for different reasons too, which is why this format's so great, because it's so balanced, and every deck feels really winnable. But yeah, like Agents and its variants are all tier 1. I think this is honestly the best deck out of them all. You have the potential to brick on Shine Balls, sure, but just the raw power that this deck can do, between like Hyperion just being an absolute terrifying monster to deal with, and then, you know, even things like Christia and like Gotchi, Shine Balls, like making Gotchi is actually really, really obnoxious too. Like it's hard to deal with. 2000 attack is actually pretty strong in this meta. So yeah, Agents, both Chaos and TG Agents would be tier 1. I cannot, like without a doubt in my head, probably the best decks of the format, very closely related to plants and TGs. Okay, Piper Chaos, this deck's also tier 1. It topped a YCS in 2012, and it just pluses really hard. And again, most Chaos variants are really strong on their own. I don't know, I don't think anyone would argue that this deck is tier 1. Quick Draw, I love this deck. The ceiling is so high. The explosivity of this deck is so high. The one weakness this deck has is it is crippled by Valor Maxi. Valor Maxi destroy this deck so bad. Like, arguably, maybe worse than Infernity. Infernity could, like, make some back row, and, like, this deck has to Glass Cannon all out, and it can just get destroyed because of that. Okay, this is Disaster Dragons. This is another, like, Edison build that moves over. I think there might be better ways to abuse triple red MD, but I don't think, like, you could deny that it's strong. Yeah, I think I'll put it there. It's really good, not great. Okay, this is Zombie Monarchs. This deck topped a YCS in 2012 and had very minimal differences that you would have to make this function in 2011. I've seen a lot of people play this deck and test this deck. It's really good. It honestly, it's so good. It's definitely tier 1. Can easily compete with any of these guys up here. And I'd say, again, is probably better than these guys. I'm still debating on whether or not I want gadgets ahead of Diva Hero, but for now we'll just leave it like that. Recruiters, this is another, like, weird kind of sussy deck. I think it's better than these guys here, but it has weird potentials to make plays. Creature swap with a bunch of recruiters is, like, weirdly good, but it's just pretty outdated for the time. This was honestly one of the decks I almost considered not putting in the list at all, just because of how, like, I want to say boring the list seems. But at the same time, it's not that bad. Like, it's actually better than some other stuff on here, so it's, like, it's honestly tough to say. But yeah, it's still technically a semi-viable strategy. All right. So now we have Nordics. This deck's tier 1, 100%. Just for making my case for Nordics being tier 1. In fact, I actually probably put it higher on the list here. Nordics, like, okay, so what makes Nordics so good is they mask themselves as plants, right? They run Tour Guide and Tengu. So, like, turn 1, you summon a Tour Guide, get a Sangan, pass, right? Your opponent is prone to attacking over that standalone Tour Guide and leaving the Sangan. In which case, you then get to drop a Grey Goat, and without committing your normal summon, you have a free level 7 Synchro and a Sangan for, like, the next turn. And that's a really powerful board presence. Like, it could just blow people out, because there's room to go into, like, Ancient Sacred Wyvern and just OTK your opponent. It's really, really good. Not to mention, back when I hosted my first 2011 tournament with, like, Luxury Gaming, we had, like, 200 people competing. And I had a friend who I taught how to play Yu-Gi-Oh on this format. Like, he learned how to play Yu-Gi-Oh like a week or two before the tournament, and I said, you should play Nordics, the deck sleeper. No one will know how to play against it, and you'll probably just blow people out. And he gave it a shot, and he got top 16. And he had played Yu-Gi-Oh for 2 weeks, man. This deck is good. 100% good. Cloudian, another sussy deck. Better than... Its issue is it doesn't have a lot of options as far as like removal goes. Like, you can't really run a lot of like some of the key staple cards because this deck needs a lot for its engine. It still like can control the game quite nicely and generate some advantage. The fact that all of them can't be destroyed by battle is super obnoxious, but again, it's just not really quite strong enough as like a pure deck. All right, this one is another deck I invented myself, and this is rank 5 windups. Okay, factories at 3. You basically run soldier, dog, juggler, which is juggler's like a brick. Honestly, it doesn't do anything, but you need it just to search to like pitch for stuff. And then you run triple factory, and then like cyber dragons, quick draws, anything to make a rank 5 instant fusion. And let me tell you, Tiras is legal in this format. No one played it because there wasn't really any good way to use it. This is the best way to use it, and Tiras blows people out. It's really good. I can't say the deck's tier 1, but I can say it's probably like low end tier 1.5. Like, it's actually like Tiras is a scary card. Like, it's the ability to pop stuff and then can't be destroyed by card effects. Like, a lot of stuff destroys by card effect in this format. So like, it ain't no joke. Gladiator Beast, this deck top to YCS. This is specifically referring to like Hero Lives Gladiator Beasts, and I think that this deck is like probably low end tier 1. Hero Lives really buffed the deck. It really made it feel a lot stronger. Just basically giving you a free, like, if you have like Test Tiger and a Hero Lives, you have a free Geyseras without committing normal summon. That's what the deck needed. The deck in Edison, for example, is like so reliant on normal summons that it feels really terrible. But even cards like Forbidden Lance, and even Horn of the Phantom Beast really buffed this deck quite a bit to feel like a strong contender. Again, I think it's low end of tier 1, but I still think it's tier 1. Fish, this deck is... it's okay. I mean, it can do the cool fish combo. It's fragile and like can get Veilered and stuff. But it's still a cool deck. Like, I think anyone feels satisfied when they're resolving super ancient deep sea, what's his name? I can't even pronounce it. 6 Samurai, 1.5. This deck just got nerfed, like way too hard nerf from the format prior. Having 1 Xian actually hurts a lot. I personally think they honestly could have kept it at 2. And it wouldn't have been that bad, just because like this deck is so glass cannon, and again gets destroyed by Max C. If it becomes like a tier 1 deck or a problem, then Kinetic Soldier just, or whatever they renamed Kinetic Soldier to, just blows it out. You can tell I'm a Yugi boomer based on the fact that I forget what they renamed it to. Dark Dragon. This is basically another Edison list that translates to 2011. It's much more balanced in 2011 than it is in Edison. You dump your whole hand and you Norialis to try to win the game. And like bring back Red MD and just like simplify the game state and win. It's actually pretty strong still. Its weaknesses in its ability to get Veilered. But we'll put it next to its buddy Vayu Turbo here. And say that it's not quite tier 1, tier 1.5. Still completely viable strategy, but hand traps added very nice counterplay to a deck like this. So thank you, Veiler. We appreciate you. Okay, then this is like just the same thing as like Flameveil Sworn. I think Flameveil Sworn's a bit better than like pure Flamevels. This deck just kind of gradually gets outclassed by everything else. Still has plenty of explosivity between Rekindling and stuff like that. Rekindling's at 3. So yeah, it's not that strong, but it's okay. Gravekeepers, this deck's tier 1. It definitely saw a lot of play for the format. I'd probably put it a little higher. Like, honestly, like, Necro Valley hurts agents. It hurts Tengu plants. It hurts chaos. It hurts, like, pretty much, like, it hurts heroes. It hurts, like, a lot of the decks in the format. Zombies, Piper, chaos. Where it falters is it honestly doesn't have a very good TG matchup. I think TGs is what puts this deck in its place and makes it a low tier 1. That being said, it's still tier 1. Like, it's still strong enough to compete with the boys, I think. It just, like, it has its bad matchups, but its good matchups are really, really good. And then it just has to make it through siding. So game 2 and 3 is where this deck also has, like, a bit of a struggle. But I still think this deck is, like, completely capable of topping and being really strong. Recruiter is really good. And Royal Tribute is obviously, like, really nuts. I guess also Dark World can punish the turn 1 Royal Tribute. But again, the nice thing about the format is because it's so diverse, there's so many different things you can actually be playing against, where, like, if you get blown out by Royal Tributing a Dark World deck, well, now you know, and you can side for the Dark World, right? Like, it's a risk you run, but it's, like, low risk, right? Like, most people are probably playing one of these, like, top 3 decks or whatever. Spellcasters. So this is another deck I came up with, and it was based on, like, an Edison list, but it basically uses Pitch Black Power Stone. You run cards like Breaker and then Defender. Defender is weirdly one of the best cards in the deck, because Defender says you could remove spell counters from anywhere to prevent the destruction for each monster that would be destroyed, for each spellcaster. So that means if you have a Pitch Black Power Stone and a Defender, you can remove as many counters from that Pitch Black Power Stone to protect your Defender and keep it alive. That, and they're all, like, lights and dark, so there's, like, chaos to it. And also Secret Village of the Spellcasters is a really good card. I actually think this deck is pretty strong, has a lot of potential. But again, I can't justify putting it higher than 1.5. Demise OTK. I actually invented this one as well. Not like the original Demise OTK, but I invented this strictly because it's at 3. Like, everything's at 3 for this. Like, you can play it all. But instead of going with, like, that insect variant, I combined it with Dark World. So the deck moves a lot quicker, and then you run Dark World plus Dark Calling, because they're all level 8, so you can use trade-ins to send the Magnet Warrior. And basically the fundamental combo is you resolve this guy, you blow up your opponent's board, you Dark Calling, and you attack for game. Like, Dark Calling, banishing, like, a Grapha and a Magnet Warrior, plus Armageddon is over 8,000. So it's enough to end the game right there. So it's a cool combo, little bricky. You can't really run a lot of defensive resources, so you have to pull it off fast. The deck moves really fast. There's a lot of draw power, but I don't think it's higher than 1.5. It might even just be tier 2. It's a cool combo, really fun deck to play, but is it good? I don't know. Dragunity. This deck topped a YCS in 2011. I think it was Fraser Smith who was piloting it, and the build I have on there is as close as I could get to Fraser Smith's build based on the Pojo forums, and, like, messaging him myself. I think this deck is, like, low tier 1. The nice thing about it is it's, like, really easy to turn 1, like, Stardust or something. Like, turn 1 setting up those defenses is pretty good. I almost want to say it's 1.5. It will be fair. I don't want people to flame me for how many tier 1 decks there are, but it's just, like, this is just how diverse the format really was. Yeah, it's a pretty consistent deck. It just can do a lot. Spaceships. This deck was way better in Edison, just because Honest is at 2 in Edison. So it takes a heavy nerf here. I like it, though. I think it's fun. Has potential to do weird OTKs. But it's not really better than anything else. Like, you could probably say it's better than Recruiters. This shows how much I believe in Ice Berries. The fact that I don't have like everything ahead of it. Okay, Moja. So this deck is really cool. This deck is abusing King of the Beast and YuGiOh. Okay, so the strong thing about it is you can, like, there's so many weird synergies in that deck, but basically the core concept is you get Moja in grave, you get King of the Beast in grave, you summon a YuGiOh, you bring back the Moja, you tribute it off for King of the Beast. Every normal summon results in a 2500 attack beater, or, like, since you can only control one of these guys on the field at a time, the other option is you tribute it off, or like you bring back a level 1 tuner, like a Veiler or Key Mouse. Key Mouse searches YuGiOh, which is really good, so there's like a lot of synergies. And then you can make a level 8 synchro every turn. So you're either normal summoning to bring back King of the Beast or normal summoning to make a level 8 synchro. You have a big hand. Dragunity feels really good. You can run a lot of hand traps. It honestly feels pretty strong. But again, I don't think it's higher than tier 1.5. But give this deck a try. Honestly, go try this deck. It feels weirdly good. Like it has, I think it has some bad matchups, but it feels really good. Fabled. I love this deck. It's so cool. It's just so cool. My issue with Fabled is that it gets completely destroyed by Maxi. If Maxi didn't exist in this format, this deck would easily be tier 1. But because Maxi does, I think I'll put it kind of next to Quick Draw. It's actually really strong. I think it topped the YCS in like early 2011 before the September ban list. But this deck has a lot of cool things it can do. It's just so special summon dependent, and like all of its monsters are so weak on their own. You need to combo off, so that's why it really can't exceed tier 1. Alright, Jurak, this is kind of like Flamvel. I don't think it's that bad, but I think it's like high tier 2. It can win. It definitely can win, but is it... I don't even know if I could justify tier 1.5. Feels good, not great. Gate Heroes, I believe. Yeah, this would be Gate Heroes. So, Fusion Gate Heroes, honestly, not that bad. You could almost make a case for this to be tier 1, but I'll be fair and put it at tier 1.5. So yeah, I mean it can do, like, the crack thing is just like normal Stratos, banish for the Shining turn 1. Now your opponent has to just out the Shining turn 1. And if they can't do that, it's a problem. And even if they can, if it's like through like any form of destruction, the next turn you can just banish them again to bring it back. That and like Voltic attacking directly with, like, so you like normal Voltic with Shining, you attack over their monster, then swing with Voltic, you get Stratos, you search again, you banish. Like, there's cool combos with this deck. It really has a potential to be tier 1. I just haven't tested it far enough to know just how good it really is. But I think tier 1.5 is a safe bet. Mist Valley, this deck's also a tier 1.5. Really cool combos. We'll put it around here. The deck can do a lot of cool stuff. Like the fact that Tengu, you can special Tengu off of Divine Wind of the Mist Valley in itself is just really good. That and like bouncing Tengu, like even though you don't really want to have Tengu in hand, like it creates these like crazy plus plays. And yeah, this deck can just do a whole lot, just abusing Divine Wind of the Mist Valley, and it's really fun to play. It's really fun. But I don't think it's like as good, as consistently good as these guys up here. Psychics, on the other hand, is consistently as good as these guys here. This deck is so... It's so floaty. It feels like TG, but in like some ways it's worse, and in some ways it's better. Like you basically they attack into Witch, you banish Esper Girl, you draw for turn, you special the Esper Girl, banish a card face down, off that special summon, you summon a TG Werewolf. Now you have a free level 5 Synchro, which can be Mandroid to set up for Miracle Synchro Fusion, which that card is like really good in itself. The ultimate Axon Kicker is broken. Like broken card for the format. Like, can't be destroyed by card effects, has piercing, and also like increases your life points by everything you destroy. Feels really strong. But yeah, you can like special summon them, synchro for 5 for free, and then add that card. And so like, and that's without using normal summon. And that can even go even further by if you have like Tengu or something, you can normal Tengu with that and go into Trishula for like free, because then you add the card back and get another Tengu. Like it's weirdly really, really good. That like can abuse creature swap nicely. It's just floaty. All your monsters stick really well. I love this deck. I think it's very strong. I put it probably next to Nordics in terms of strength, but honestly, it can go toe-to-toe with any of these easily. Battery Man, I think I'd give it a 1.5. Battery Man AAA gets a massive buff because it's a one-card Utopia. That and like being able to run BLS in this deck with Tour Guide feels really good. The Battery Man OTK combo or whatever, it's not that strong, but I just think Battery Man Battery Man Microcell is just a really, really good turn 1 card to play. It just feels kind of good, but again, I don't think it's like, it's probably not even higher than this. I put it down here. Scraps, this deck topped a YCS in 2011. It's definitely tier 1. If you haven't played this deck with Ultimate Offering, try this deck with Ultimate Offering. For the website, I use the build that like topped the YCS, but Ultimate Offering and Scraps, I can't describe it. You just gotta try it. You can do so much. It's so broken, so broken. X-Sabers, so this would be, oh, I see. Okay, yeah. So I'm missing the second picture for this because I used 2 of the same pictures for X-Sabers as well. So this is representing spaceships as well. So this down here, I'll show you. Okay, so these have already been put in play, but I'm missing the second picture of Hyperion and the second picture of X-Saber of what's his name? Why can't I think of his name? Gotham's. That's what I'm talking. Gotham. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I'm missing Gotham's here, right? Gotham's are like an extra picture of Gotham's, but Floater X-Saber and X-Sabers, they both belong in tier 1. I arguably think that this deck it's better than Plants, but I know a lot of people would disagree with that, maybe. So I think I'd put it up here. I think this deck is really underrated, and here's why I'll explain. X-Sabers, if you look at the archetype as a whole, every single monster you play is good. Every single one. Like the whole archetype, every monster, like they mesh really well together. They can make really good plays. They blow out any back row deck, and every monster is good. Like Full Helm Knight, crazy card. Emrys Blade, absolutely a great card. It's literally just a Mystic Tomato, but it's an archetype Mystic Tomato. Insane. You have like Dark Soul, which in this format, keep in mind, like if you like send the same Dark Soul to the grave twice, you get a search twice in the grave in the end phase. Like nothing feels better than being like end phase, Chainlink 1, this Dark Soul, Chainlink 2, the same Dark Soul, and then you just search 2 cards. It feels so good. But like that aside, like it's so explosive, can OTK, can play really slow and feel really rewarding just through like using Full Helm Knight to synchro for 6, like make an Orient Dragon, banish their card. It's so good. So like imagine there's 2 agents here, 2 X-Sabers here. So I don't know how many there are in a single row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we're at 22 tier 1 decks. And I don't know if anyone could make a case disputing any of these. I think they're all really strong, and if you haven't played them, that's probably why you don't think they're strong, because they're strong. Macrocosmos, this deck gets a huge buff with Bada Duality, a huge buff, and it has insane matchups against everything. My buddy won a 2011 tournament with this deck, like pretty recently, like got first place, went undefeated. This deck's good. It's definitely tier 1. It's just having access to duality makes this deck feel so good. because you can like it solves the problem it had for every other format, which is like if you play this in Edison and you don't have duality, there's a world where you just see like only your survivors and no macro or DeFi, or you see like too many macro DeFi and nothing else. Duality just gets you what you need. That and Vanity's Emptiness with this deck feels pretty naturally good. For example, like a really common play I saw my buddy do in that tournament is he would like summon a DD Assailant, flip Vanities, and crash a Tengu, because it banishes the Tengu, and then like Vanities doesn't trigger, so you just 1-for-1 a Tengu, which feels really, really good to just get it off the field. So yeah, it's definitely a strong deck. Machina Gadgets, similar to Gadgets, I put it on a low tier 1. I think the pure Gadgets build is actually better. Like the Tengu Gadgets version is better than Machina Gadgets in this format, but I don't think anyone would dispute the fact that Machina Gadgets is a really strong deck and can easily beat any of these. I do think it's a bit weaker. You can maybe make a case for this deck to be 1.5, but yeah, I think it's like somewhat fair to put it here. Volcanics, this deck is I'd say it's tier 2. It like can plus like crazy, it can board wipe like crazy, but it doesn't really do anything to like, no matter how much it does all those things, like board wipes and stuff aren't actually that strong in a meta where that's like filled with floaters like Tengus and TGs, so it just feels okay. And the last deck we're gonna cover is Worms. Worms, again, I think would be on a low end tier 1. It topped the YCS at the time. It's really versatile, really powerful as a back row deck. Let's see. All right, so off the tier 1 decks, we have 11 up here. 11 for each row, plus these 3, so that makes 25. If you count the extra X-Saber build that's supposed to be up here, as well as the other TG build, like TG Agents and X-Sabers. The reason why they're separate entities is because they play very differently than their like standard build. So like the floater X-Saber build plays off of like no back row at all, and it plays a very like spell heavy, like aggressive game. And then like TG Agents is like very different from like a Chaos Agent build. Different like play possibilities, both feel very, very good to play. But yeah, so there should be a second picture of Hyperion here and a second picture of Gothams, making this a full 27 card, 27 deck tier 1 list, like for like tier 1s. You could maybe argue that these last two down here could go to 1.5. But I mean, I think like if we're being fair, like if we're giving an average, assuming some of these could probably go up as well. I think 27. I think like my 30 estimate is a pretty good number. Just because I genuinely think, like, historically speaking, this was a tier 1 deck. This deck's really good. This deck's really good. This deck's really good. All of these guys could be tier 1. But I think, like, majority of the decks we have here at tier 1, like, really couldn't be disputed as tier 1. Like, they're very, very good. I think if you think any of these here aren't tier 1, aside from, like, maybe these last two, I just want to say you probably haven't played much of them in the format, because they do feel very, very good. But yeah, I mean, some of these decks aren't even historical. Like I said, some of these weren't really played for the format, but just through my personal testing of them and like experience seeing them be played, they're really, really good. But I think this is where I would put everything for now. I'm just trying to give final thoughts and see. Technically, I probably did our boy Skull Servants a little dirty down here, but I do think this is one of the worst decks on this list. But you know, you can't leave a King of the Skull Servants out, man. Like he's a cool card. But in all ways, shapes, and form, there's just so many better versions of the type of deck that this is trying to play. But yeah, I think that's it for the tier list. Take a look. I think there is a beautiful diversity of tier 1 decks. Just remember there's 2 agents, 2 X-Sabers. The reason why they're like separate is because they play very differently. So I count them as separate decks. But I do think that all of these decks are incredibly strong. And if you haven't played them, like give them a shot, play them against the other meta decks, and you'll kind of see like where exactly they stand. I don't think like you would find these results to be any different. Like keep in mind, like for every deck I put in this library, including like these low tier ones down here, I wouldn't include them in the library if I couldn't get them to beat like the meta decks. So it'd be like Tengu plants, agents, or even TGs. If I couldn't get them to consistently be able to beat those decks at least like at a minimum 40% of the time, but most of the time it was like slightly below 50% of the time. So like these low tier decks could beat them like around 50% of the time or lower, probably lower, right? For these, just because they're a little more gimmicky. These decks can easily do it at a 50% of the time rate, and then these decks, like I think on a good day can just destroy them, right? So that's typically what my method was on testing them to see how good they were. But I don't think, I really don't think anything is overrated too much. Maybe things are even underrated here on this list, but that's the beauty of this format, guys. It's so diverse. There is nothing else like it in Yu-Gi-Oh! There's never been a format that is this diverse. So while it may seem unbelievable to even claim 25 tier 1 decks with, like, I mean, I don't even know how many 1.5s we have down here. More than, if we got 11 here, so then, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. You can just see how actually diverse and strong this list is. Like, keep in mind, like, Infernity's top the YCS at the time. I like this top the YCS like right before 2011, but Maxi like right before like September 2011. But just remember, like, Maxi was legal in that format, so like its problems that exist for it were still around, and it was able to top through it. So I think the biggest thing about these decks is any good pilot on them, any good player playing any of these, like with the right build, can win. And that's why I love this format so much. It's why I think these decks are as strong as they are, because I truly believe in like the capabilities of a deck behind a good pilot. So yeah, I think that wraps it up for this first ever tier list. We'll do more for other formats later, but as like we add them. But for now, just let me know in the comments what you think, what you agree with, what you disagree with. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I really appreciate the support. It's a lot of fun trying to put all this content together for you, but it's also a lot of work. So supporting me really helps, because everything I'm giving you guys as far as content, these libraries, it's all for free to the public. So I really appreciate the support, trying to get my account monetized, all those good things. So yeah, thank you for watching. Have a great time dueling today.